These two men are not satisfied with the justice the man who killed their loved one got, so they plan a revenge mission. However, eliminating someone is not as easy as it seems, especially when their victim proves to be a survivor. A voice recording of a woman, Stephanie, plays. She apologizes for her actions that morning and says that she will be home shortly. However, her body is seen lying next to a river. Currently, David listens to the voice message. He then walks into a convenience store and starts buying several items. These include ropes and duct tape. When asked, David says that he is planning on renovating his kitchen that weekend. He goes home and packs up the stuff he had bought plus a few others, like knives and zip ties. Elsewhere, Troy leaves work for the day and goes home where he intends to spend the weekend drinking. He lives with his cat, and he watches the news about a brutal murder where the husband pleads guilty to eliminating his wife. Aaron is in the basement of his house where he packs up a few things, including a rifle. His wife and son come back home. We learn that Aaron and David are going camping for the weekend. David soon shows up, and the two men leave. However, the men first switch off their phones and drive to a certain neighborhood. They watch as Troy exits his house to buy liquor at a local shop. The men then sneak into the house, cut the electrical supply, and then prepare an ambush. When Troy gets back, the men quickly attack him, binding him with ropes and then sedating him. The men throw the unconscious Troy in a large canvas bag and put him in the trunk of their car. They then drive away, turning on their phones after a while. David then tells Aaron about Megan, a girl who keeps asking him out. After driving for a while, David and Aaron change sides so that David can continue driving. The meticulous way in which the men conduct the whole abduction makes it obvious that this is something they have planned for a while. Soon, the two pull up to a petrol station to refuel. Aaron fills the tank and an extra can while David goes inside to pay and get a few supplies. Suddenly, Troy gets up and starts thumping the trunk just as another motorist pulls over. This worries Aaron, and he quickly starts hitting the car, hoping that his noise will muffle Troy's thumping. Luckily, the new arrival walks into the store. Aaron quickly rushes toward the store, gesturing for David so they can leave. As they are about to leave the petrol station, the new arrival stops the car. The men are afraid that their secret is out, but the man gives them the coffee David had left in a haste to leave the store. The men breathe a sigh of relief as they exit the petrol station. They quickly stop at a remote area so David can sedate Troy again. The two men continues on their journey. However, a police car stops them. The police officer reports that he has stopped them since one of their taillights isn't working well. The men were visibly worried since the tail light was working just fine. After checking their licenses, the police officer asks David out of the car so that they can investigate together. The officer asks David to open the trunk so they can look at the taillight's wiring. When they find nothing, the officer agrees to let them off with a warning. Aaron and David are excited seeing that the officer never suspected that someone was in the canvas bag and totally believed that they were going camping. The two men reach a private property and park their car near a tree. Aaron asks David to get some sleep while he watches over Troy. In the morning, Troy wakes up and the men string him up on a tree. They then reveal that they have taken him since he had raped and murdered Stephanie, David's wife, and Aaron's sister. Troy had been sentenced to 32 years in jail but had been let out after 10 years. The men have some questions for Troy as they want to understand what happened. Troy tries screaming for help, but he is whipped with a rubber and groove stick. Realizing he is in a difficult situation, Troy confesses. He says that he admits what he did was wrong and that is sorry. When asked why he chose Stephanie, he says that he picked her since she was pretty. This angers David, who hits him furiously and then staggers away. Aaron walks toward David asking him if he is okay. David says that he cannot carry on since being with Troy brings back all the pain he felt when Stephanie died and during her trial. Aaron tells him to use the pain he is feeling to get through their plan. A brief flashback shows the night Stephanie had been abducted. She was walking to the train station when Troy abducted her. He took her to an isolated spot and punched her brutally when she kept on screaming. This flashback gives David the strength to continue his revenge plan. He and Aaron walk back to Troy and ask him why he eliminated Stephanie. Afraid of being hit again, Troy confesses that he executed Stephanie as she had mocked his manhood size. Aaron repeatedly punches Troy, saying that his sister was braver in her last minutes than Troy has ever been. The men want to castrate Troy, but he begs them to stop, explaining how he had been raped in the prison for the 10 years he was arrested while the guards did nothing to help. Troy explains that he has paid the penance for his sin. The men decide to skip that part and move on to the next. Aaron leaves David to watch over Troy while he goes to finish digging the hole. However, it's seen that Aaron is also having a hard time going through with this process as he vomits and his hands are shaking. Meanwhile, Troy warns David that they will not get away with this plan as they will be found out. David hits him and reveals that he had spent 3 years planning every detail of this mission. Soon, Aaron comes back and the two men untie Troy and then lead him toward the grave. With every step, Troy begs for his life, but no one listens to him. He warns the two men that if they eliminate him, they will lose a part of themselves. The men throw Troy into the hole and then tie a rope to his neck, dooming him to death by strangulation. Unfortunately, David fails to carry through and walks away. Aaron drags Troy out of the hole and walks toward David, accusing him of making him go along with the plan only for him to back out. He warns David that if they let Troy go, they will be arrested for attempted murder. Suddenly, Aaron hears something and they see a vehicle pull up. The men quickly sedate Troy and hide him in the bushes, then go to meet the intruder. His name is Brian, and he is a neighbor. Since he is doing some repair work on the property, Aaron and David have no choice but to help him so that he can leave. Many hours later, Brian finally leaves. Aaron and David go to the bush, eager to finish their plan and return home, but Troy is nowhere to be found. This prompts them to start searching the woods while questioning their plan. Eventually, Aaron finds Troy, still tied up in the woods. Aaron draws his rifle and orders Troy to turn around. However, Troy refuses, prompting Aaron to approach him so he can hit him. Troy hits Aaron and then starts running away while Aaron chases after him. No matter how many times he tries, Aaron cannot hit him with the bullets. David hears the shots and runs toward Aaron. The two men reconvene and realize that they need to get Troy before it is too late. They split up again to cover more ground. David picks up a log to use for defense, and he starts looking around, while Troy tries hiding from him. Determined to save his life, Troy does his best to remain hidden while he advances further into the woods. He then spots David and sneaks up on him. He attacks and beats him, then grabs a rock. However, he cannot bring himself to eliminate him, so he runs away. David calls for Aaron and the two keep following Troy. Troy finds the men's vehicle, but he cannot use it since the keys are not in the ignition. He leaves the car and continues running on foot. Troy gets to the gate and finds it locked. Luckily, he manages to jump over and hides in the nearest bushes, just as Aaron and David drive off the compound. After searching for a while, they realize that Troy has gone to Brian's house. Troy finds Brian in the barn and asks for help, explaining how Aaron and David want to execute him. Aaron walks in with his rifle and points it at Troy, explaining to Brian that he is the one who eliminated Stephanie. Brian and David try to talk Aaron out of eliminating Troy since it is now too messy. Troy apologizes and then says that they can walk away from this and no one has to know what happened. Troy wants Brian to help him since he might be next. However, Aaron shoots Troy, and the bullet passes right through his eye. Aaron and David then try convincing Brian to keep his mouth shut. Brian promises to do so, but he runs away as soon as he gets a chance. Aaron and David run after him so they can try to silence him before he says anything. Sadly, Brian trips and falls, hitting his head on a rock and dying instantly. The two men come to terms with what has happened. Later, the men burn Troy's body after clearing their presence on Brian's property. They then drive home in silence, with David silently blaming Aaron for how the weekend went on. As soon as David drops Aaron to his house, he leaves without as much as a second word. When he gets to his house, he breaks down, crying at what had happened and wondering whether Stephanie would have approved.